Welcome to another wrestling podcast. Joining us today is one of the most unique characters, not only in the world of professional wrestling, but in life in general. He is the warlord of weird. Ladies and gentlemen, Sinn Bodhi.
Hey, buddy. Thanks for having me.
So, how are you doing these days?
All right. I'm pretty busy. Running around like a lunatic in the universe, like a chicken with my head cut off. Jackass of all trades. Got a lot of things going on. Doing some Freakshow Wrestling, which is my show, my brainchild. And it's sort of the culmination of burlesque, comedy, magic, sideshow, and wrestling all smacked together in a ring. And when I'm not doing that, I am opening for Jake the Snake's Unspoken Word Tour. And then I'm working on some more film scripts and doing some acting roles and different things in LA. And then wrestling on independent shows here and there. So I'm keeping busy.
Yeah, I would say so. Now, we follow you on Twitter at Sinn Bodhi, and it looks like you've been really busy as of late, helping out with Jake Roberts' new movie, The Resurrection of Jake Roberts. Can you tell us a little bit about that movie?
Yeah, it's the whole documented recovery and reconstruction of Jake. DDP, Dallas Page, longtime friend of Jake's. He does DDP yoga and all that stuff. And he went and kind of scooped Jake out of his natural habitat. Jake was in a bad way and got him eating right and exercising and got him clean. And the movie documents the whole thing. And it's just a really awesome, feel-good story. And some ups and downs throughout the way. And just to show people that, everybody's flawed. And, to be human is to be flawed. And it's just a really, really cool, uplifting story. I mean, every time we play the movie at the Sundance, Slamdance film festivals, there wasn't a dry eye in the house. I mean, it was really moving, and it was really inspirational, and it was awesome.
Now, it's no secret that you idolized Jake as a kid growing up. Do you remember your first impressions of him as a child?
Yeah, I was scared of him. He was the first guy that I was just intrigued to wonder, like, where he went when he left the building. Like, I saw scarier guys, like the Road Warriors or the Wild Samoans or what have you. But Jake just kind of was creepy and got under your skin and he was sort of the most real-life character. He was the most foreboding, and I just wanted to know more about him.
Now, do you remember the first time that you met Jake?
Yep, the first time that I met Jake was in England, and he was actually pretty mean to me the first day we met. I was told, throughout life, just don't aspire to meet your idols and all that jazz. And so I was expecting, I knew Jake, he had a reputation to be a little ornery, or he had his demons or what have you. So I planned, for that. And but still, when I met him, I said, "Hey, my name is Sinn. Nice to meet you." And he basically was just like, "Nice to meet me," because you don't know a fucking thing about me. And he walked away.
Wow.
And I was like, "Okay." And I knew to not take it personally, but I was still a little bit irritated nonetheless. And he sort of saw that I was perturbed. I don't know if he realized I was perturbed at him or not. But he watched me lace up like I was going in a battle, and he was just like, "Hey kid, take it easy. Why are you lacing those boots up so tight for?" And all this stuff. And we had some animosity, and then sure enough, we ended up wrestling each other, and then we just had a blast, and we kind of buddied up ever since.
That's awesome. Now let's back up a little bit. You're obviously a very unique person. What was your childhood like?
My childhood.
Yeah.
Well, I think I was probably a lot like Stewie from Family Guy. I was pretty analytical, and I think I was wise for my years. As many stupid mistakes as I made, I still kind of felt like, like when you're a little kid and you see, the first time you ever see, two kids kiss and everybody goes, ooh, it's a big deal, like, ew, gross, and everybody like busts your balls over that kind of stuff. I just remember thinking, like, as a kid, I'm like, why are the other kids making fun of some kid that's brave enough to kiss another kid? Because this is kind of circle life, isn't it? Like, if we don't start kissing each other and making babies, then the world's going to die out. I mean, I remember thinking stuff like that as a kid. So I think that's a pretty weird sort of surveying thoughts as far as the planet goes. It's kind of like that little alien kid that, like, that gets adopted by Earthlings on those Warner Brothers cartoons, and like the Earth kids are making paper airplanes, and then this little alien kid is making little paper alien shuttles that fires laser guns and stuff. So my brain was just all over the place, thinking all sorts of weird stuff when I was a kid.
Do you remember like what some of your passions were as a kid?
Yeah, I love comic books. I love pro wrestling. I grew up as a martial arts brat, but I was I was enamored with pro wrestling. Like, martial arts was the family business. My dad was a ranked fighter, and my mom had a dojo and all this stuff. And but wrestling was what had my imagination. And I lived in the country. I lived in this little like ranch house on the outskirts of town, so it was always an ordeal for me to go in after school and like play with friends and stuff like that. Like, my mom would have to drive me in when she had a minute. She was always busy and blah blah blah. So I got kind of stuck at home by myself a lot and left with my own imagination. So I kind of make believe, I was in these comic books or in these wrestling matches, and I'd play with my little action figures and kind of have little storylines and all sorts of weird stuff. And so I played in my brain quite a bit as a kid. So I think that just sort of kind of came with me into adulthood, if you can even call me an adult. I think I'm a 6'2" child, I think.
Do you remember the first time, like vividly? Do you remember the first time you watched wrestling?
I couldn't say if I remember the exact first match that I ever watched. But when I was a little kid, and we had like these little video rental stores, these little podunk video rental stores where you could get wrestling videotapes and stuff like that. So I saw a lot of those like best of WWF kind of tapes. And Saturday morning, I'd always watch, WWF in the mornings, and I'd watch Saturday Night Main Event. I think the first vivid thing I remember was I watched the War to Settle the Score. I watched like Piper and Hogan, and I was totally hooked. And I thought Piper was the coolest dude. And then I remember that. I remember Piper and Orndorff and Bob Orton and Adrian Adonis and Macho Man and Jake and Steamboat. And those were my first sort of fuzzy memories of wrestling. Actually, first, before I even knew what wrestling was, I kept on hearing, oh, Hulk Hogan, Roddy Piper, Hulk Hogan, Roddy Piper, and I didn't know what that was. And then I saw a newspaper, and it said Hulk Hogan's wrestling, at Maple Leaf Gardens or what have you. But underneath was this black ballet dancer, like a dude, and I'm thinking, is that Hulk Hogan? Like, I didn't know, So for the longest time, I'm thinking Hulk Hogan, this big famous wrestler everybody's talking about, is this like black guy in ballet tights. So when I watched the first wrestling match, and big blonde, mustache Hulk Hogan came out, I'm like, I think the announcer made a mistake. That's not the right guy. And I quickly realized that it was me who was in the wrong and not the announcer at Maple Leaf Gardens. But yeah, I mean, I remember, I guess long story short, or short story really, really long, is Piper and Hogan, War to Settle the Score.
Okay. Was that the moment for you that made you want to be a wrestler, or did that come later?
That intrigued me. Like, I loved it. I was hooked, right from the first second I watched it. And again, to me, it was live superheroes and supervillains. I would love, in a perfect world, I would have loved to be a wrestler. I thought that'd be cool, man. I wanted to grow up to be a superhero. But I remember seeing all these guys, and they were so huge and larger than life and stuff. And I figured, I'm just this runty little kid, I'm tiny. I mean, you got to grow up to be 7 feet tall just to be a referee in this show is what I thought as a kid. So I thought as much as I loved it, I just didn't ever see me being physically capable of doing it.
Now, you mentioned the Maple Leaf Gardens. You're obviously, for those of you listening that don't know, you're from Canada originally. Did you have any favorite Canadian wrestlers growing up?
Well, I remember when I was a kid, I remember there was the Rougeau brothers, and then later on, Jacques Rougeau was the Mountie and stuff, and they were usually pretty heelish. When the Rougeau brothers were baby faces, I really didn't They just weren't my cup of tea.
Mm-hmm.
And when they were heels, I kind of enjoyed them a little bit more, but I still really wasn't thrilled with them. And then as I got a little bit older, and then Jacques Rougeau came back as the Mountie, it was kind of half funny and half irritating to me because, you know, I was still kind of a kid and I still didn't get it. I was looking at it like through fans' eyes and not through a worker's eyes, so I wasn't really smart to what he was up to and stuff. But as far as Canadian wrestlers, as much as everybody loves Bret Hart, and I am fully respectful of Bret Hart and the rest of the Hart family, I'd have to go with Rick the Model Martel.
Nice. He's an unsung hero, I think, especially if you watch some of the old like Royal Rumbles. He put on some amazing performances. So
yeah, and I mean a lot of the guys, you know, they cycled a whole lot of things. Like, I mean, the model gimmick was, you know, a very, you know, like sort of a second coming of sort of Gorgeous George meets, you know, like all the Hollywood stereotypes and the fashion stereotypes and stuff. But I just thought it was really funny, and I thought he was cool, and you know, he was arrogant. I mean, it even had the spray. His spray was his big cologne bottle of spray that he sprayed in everybody's eyes was called Arrogance, and he just kind of made me laugh. And on top of that, I knew he was a great athlete. Like, I remember watching him in Strike Force and all that stuff. So, I mean, you know, it was kind of interesting for me to see this guy be a good guy and then flip the script and end up, you know, kind of going to the dark side. So that was kind of interesting to me as a little teeny bopper. You have to understand, I didn't, like a lot of the guys these days that watch these things historically, like on DVD or downloads or YouTube, or for $9.99 you can watch it on the Hoopy WWE network, but I watched it as it all unfolded. Like, I was like, I'm not old, but I'm not young either, and I watched wrestling, like the glory days, like as it unfolded. Like, I saw it in real time. So, I mean, I was at the perfect age where I watched Roddy Piper and Hulk Hogan happen as it happened. I watched Jake the Snake, DDT, Ricky Steamboat on the concrete as it happened. I didn't watch it years later on a DVD.
Now, you mentioned the golden word, I guess, and I know that it's been talked about to death, but I'm just briefly going to touch about it. Obviously, you grew up, you decided you wanted to become involved in wrestling. You worked on the independent scene for a while, then you got called up to TNA, and then we're now to the point where you get into WWE. You were brought up after some time in some of their developmental territories as Kizarny, and you said in interviews that you weren't really able to do the character that you had envisioned for yourself. Did you feel at that point that WWE was creatively stifling to you?
Well, yeah, I think just about everybody at some point in their career at WWE feels stifled. Mm-hmm. I mean, they sort of want to reinvent you, or they want to reinvent the proverbial wheel, or they want to, you know, put something altogether different on you, or they want something really vanilla and safe because they've got investors and, you know, a board of directors. Whereas, like, back in the day when the guys were like the superstars, they really just got to be themselves. Like, I mean, you know, characters like Jake or Steamboat or Razor Ramon or Macho Man or JYD, I mean, they weren't spit out of a developmental system. They were traveling the planet, honing their craft, becoming themselves organically. I think that's what's really missing now. And some of the guys that do have the capability of doing that now are really not allowed to do that now because they're under that corporate scrutiny and that sort of machine. They're just cogs in a machine as opposed to being their own entities.
Now, you've been gone from WWE for around 6 years, but ultimately to the casual fan, it's what you'll most likely be remembered for. Do you have, like, does that bother you, or do you think that, you know, to most everybody else, they know you a different way, so it doesn't bother you?
Well, Vince's product is so big that, you know, 15 minutes of fame on there is worth a lifetime anywhere else for the most part. But, I mean, I'm really trying to transcend wrestling. I mean, you know, with Freakshow Wrestling, it's something that I do in Los Angeles and Las Vegas. It's very much a show built for those two cities and for the world that just wants to see something different. They don't want to see the boring, watered-down, trite, formulaic kind of things. I hopefully will be remembered for putting on crazy, weird, out-of-the-box kind of shows as opposed to being remembered as a guy that got saddled with some crappy gimmick and had to do his best to get it over in a very short amount of time and then got swerved politically.
Now
You know, I don't want to be remembered like that. I'm not a crybaby. I was there. It was awesome that I got a glimpse of being at that company. That's where I wanted to be as a kid. But like the Revenge of the Nerds movie, I feel like a unique, talented individual that was like trying so hard to be part of this boys club that didn't appreciate me, didn't understand what I brought to the table, and that's that. So I want to go out into the universe and do my own thing. And I work with some awesome performers. I mean, both former WWE talent, some of the guys and girls. I work with the best magicians in the world, the best sideshow performers in the world, all sorts of crazy stuff. And they all collaborate with me for me to show people what's in my brain. And, like I just had John Morrison wrestle as Jesus against Santa Claus. We had, a bunch of apostles fighting elves around the ring, and it was funny, and it was crazy, and there was high-flying stuff, and there was ooh and ah and wow and boom, bang, bop stuff, and there was really clever stuff. I mean, there was all sorts of things. We just took you on a roller coaster, and that's what a good wrestling show to me should be. And this is sort of like a battle royal of variety. There's serious wrestling, there's scary wrestling, there's funny wrestling, there's sexy wrestling, and there's comedy, and there's sideshow and magic, and just lions and tigers and bears, oh my, there's all sorts of crazy stuff going on. You don't have to be a wrestling fan to like Freakshow Wrestling. In fact, like we always would joke and say, if you like wrestling, you'll like Freakshow Wrestling. If you hate wrestling, you'll love Freakshow Wrestling. Because wrestling should be about entertainment. Any idiot that says, oh, it's not supposed to be entertaining, it's supposed to be about wrestling, just listen to yourself. That's ridiculous. I don't care what old timer says that. I don't care what new school guy says whatever. I think what I think, and I can go toe-to-toe creatively with anybody as far as I'm concerned. There's bigger wrestlers, there's more, muscular wrestlers, there's high-flying wrestlers or more scientific wrestlers. But creatively, I'll go toe-to-toe with anybody on this planet. And I think, even ask some of the creative minds of wrestling. Ask Dusty Rhodes what he thinks about my brain. Ask Dr. Tom Pritchard or Jake the Snake or Al Snow what they think about my brain. Hell, ask Colt Cabana what he thinks about my brain, I don't just think in terms of, 3 clotheslines and, a spine buster and just all these typical overdone, overused things. I'm thinking about 3-way dog collar matches and, rocking chair horse bed of nails and, all sorts of crazy stuff that just Vince can't even comprehend.
Now,
but that compliment I ever had was Jake the Snake saying, you're too dangerous for WWE, that's why they don't want you. So when the greatest mind in wrestling history tells me that, I'll have to take that as a compliment.
Absolutely. Now, you brought up Freakshow Wrestling, and as a matter of fact, you have a show coming up February 28th called Be Mine Valentine. You just gave us a little bit, but what can fans expect from that show?
You will see me in the world's first 3-way dog collar match against 2 giant, huge, crazy characters. You will see some really funny girl wrestling, and you'll see some really dangerous girl wrestling. There's a big match with a really good up-and-comer. Her name is Sage Sin Supreme. She is phenomenal. She's unique. She knows how to wrestle. She's got personality. She's got heart. We just had her wrestle another character that jumped out of my brain was the Ghost of Whitney Houston, who made it all the way on the TMZ. So, I'm making some waves. And again, we had, guys like John Morrison wrestling as Jesus against Santa. We had Gangrel wrestle in a barefoot landmine field of mousetraps match. We do all sorts of crazy stuff. We push the envelope, and some of it's funny, some of it's scary. And one of my favorite matches we ever did at Freak Show was we did a Michael Jackson knife fight, where it was kind of like the Beat It video where we had our hands taped together. So me and Gangrel were always connected through the whole match. We were armed with machetes, and they played Beat It over the loudspeakers while we, pretty much fought to the death, And on this upcoming show, we're pushing the envelope a little bit with our new villain character, Gadolf Hitler.
Wow.
Who is exactly what he sounds like, and he's got the comedic chops to pull it off. We've got a comedian/wrestler playing that character, something out of my brain. I just thought it was funny, and what better hero to put him in his place than the Ghost of Macho Man? And we've got a great wrestler that's got, he's got a WWE background, and he is the right size the right look. He can move and sound and do all the right moves. He looks like everything that the Ghost of Macho Man should be. He is. And he's a great guy and a great performer, and I think everybody's going to get a real good kick out of him. And, I mean, I'm pretty respectful when it comes to wrestling business. I'm not going to do anything to insult the boys, least of all our fallen brothers, hence Macho Man. I'm not going to make fun of Macho Man at all. If anything, this is like an awesome tribute as far as I'm concerned. And we've had the Ghost of Macho Man on a couple of earlier freak shows, and he always stole the show. And himself, as silly as it sounds, like other wrestlers, we're all wrestling with our demons and we have our baggage, and so to speak. Sometimes it was really hard for him to get in the ring. The Ghost of Macho Man gimmick was real fun for him, but I mean, personally in his life, he'd gone through the motions of where, the wrestling business is something he loved, and then he grew to hate it because of, wrestling politics and, ill-promised dreams and, things, the rug getting yanked from under your feet and all that kind of stuff. So having guys come back on and kind of saddle up the horse again, lace up the boots, get in the saddle, it's a really cool thing to see these guys like come out and they're like, you know what, man, I was never going to step foot in a wrestling ring again until you sort of said, hey man, come play with me and come, join something fun and out of the box, and let's do this. Let's own this, And I'm super proud that my friend is coming out to do this character, and it's going to be great. And we always have a blast. And I think the wrestling fans, they come out and have fun, and then the non-wrestling fans come out just to see some crazy, weird comedy, bizarre sideshow thing, and everybody leaves happy. Everybody leaves with a smile on their face. And I watch everything, like backstage. I'm literally like the creator, the stage director, the producer. I'm putting together these matches. I'm telling guys what I want in all these matches and so forth. And I'm watching the crowd through the whole match. I mean, I'm watching the matches in the crowd like an old school wrestler. And, to see, hey, are people, booing, cheering? Are they yawning? Are they looking at their phones? And I mean, every time I stick my face out there and look, they're just freaking out, laughing and pointing and booing and cheering and doing everything a wrestling fan should do. They're just expending themselves and being part of the match, and it's awesome.
Well, we obviously know that you're very busy, so we're just have a couple more questions for you. This is our lightning round. We do this every time, and just some rapid fire questions. First thing that comes to your mind, all right?
Sure.
Who is your favorite artist?
Salvador Dali.
Okay. Favorite Jake the Snake moment?
Favorite Jake moment would be him DDTing Ricky Steamboat on the concrete, because that was the pivotal moment where I was hooked. But my favorite Jake match was the very first match he had with Macho Man on Saturday Night Main Event, where they were both villains and nobody knew which way the crowd was going to side.
Okay. Favorite carnival food?
Funnel cake.
Okay. Best superhero and best villain?
Spider-Man would be the best hero for me, and villain, the Joker. Okay. A second runner-up would be Green Goblin.
Okay. Will you attempt to break any other world records?
Yes, I just might.
Okay. And this one's, being a former carnival worker, can you guess my weight?
176 pounds.
Wow, you're really close. You are like 4 pounds off. So that is amazing. We are so happy that you came on today. And for anybody else out there, I know you have a pro wrestling tees shop. I mentioned your Twitter at Sinn Bodhi. Is there any other place that people can keep up with you?
Yeah, my Facebook and my Twitter are the same. Sinn Bodhi, SINNBODHI. And if you want to check out my show, check out Facebook, Freakshow Wrestling Official.
Okay.
And then also on Instagram, Freakshow Wrestling.
Okay. Now, we would love to have you on if you have any other things coming up, so please keep us in mind. We definitely appreciate you coming on today. Busy guy. Thank you for all of the great things that you do. We're glad that you are still out there being creative, because obviously that's what the profession of wrestling needs today.
Thank you very much.